Stop using arrows in your levels. They treat players like they're stupid, make your levels boring, and make you a worse creator. Let me explain. One of the biggest parts of Geometry Dash is the learning process, where you figure out what clicks and timings you need to beat a level. It's so important that the game comes with a practice mode for every level, and gives rewards and achievements for using it. By design, the game wants you to get skilled at learning levels, so Robtop provides these options. And yes, learning a level is a skill. You can't just click randomly to find the right path. You need to analyze the level, evaluate where blocks and hazards are, and understand how they affect the timings you need. This means using your brain and spending some time and effort, and it makes you a better player. The best players don't just execute hard timings in levels, they understand and internalize them to get good. Arrows ruin this entire process. While you'd normally spend time and effort to learn a level, arrows circumvent that and just tell you the answer, which cuts out all of the interesting learning. For instance, how many clicks do you need to beat Stereo Madness? Only 24. See how you didn't get any time to think? That's basically the same effect as arrows. Now, to be fair, not every level has a dedicated learning process, but it is a skill you need for improvement. Star Grinders can beat levels in one attempt because they learn what to do in the moment as they play. The best players can beat Extreme Demons because they learn what timings exist and know how to execute them. So if you're playing any new level or anything difficult for you, you need the skill learning, and that means avoiding arrows. However, that's not where this story ends. If you've been around the community at all, you might really disagree with what I just said. There's a common trope where Star Grinders constantly use arrows to sight read levels, and if a level isn't instantly readable, they go on an angry tirade in the comments. And honestly, sometimes they're right. Learning a level is a fun and engaging experience, but only if the creator makes it fun. When you can't understand what to do in a level, your only real option is to click randomly and use brute force. Arrows seem to fix this, but they're more like putting a band-aid over shattered glass. The real issue is bad level design. Good level design uses mechanics players know about, and it rewards you for your skills. Back on Track works because you're taught how yellow pads work, so it can throw curveballs that test your knowledge of them. Club Step works because you need to collect coins before trying it so the level can assume you're good enough to take on its challenge. Even Limbo, a memory demon, rewards you for noticing subtle clues in the deco. It just has so much going on that you can easily be distracted. Arrows also have a place in level design, like guiding players through complex tasks that would be really boring otherwise. It would suck to calculate the exact trajectory in kinematics for a golf ball in a sandbox game, or to find an important underground structure by digging in random places. But outside those tasks, placing arrows stops players from thinking, and it stops you from learning good level design. If you're always telling players what to do, you'll never get to see if your task makes sense at all. This also makes gameplay far more boring. The point of level design is to make things interesting, not just straightforward. Arrows make things straightforward but not interesting. You can't get levels like Limbo or Pattern Seeker just by using arrows. You need good level design. And if you don't learn to make gameplay without using arrows, you'll take far longer to improve, both because your gameplay will all feel the same, and because arrows will be a crutch you can't let go of. So, if you shouldn't use arrows to make levels clear, interesting, or rewarding, what should you do instead? Funnily enough, you don't need to do random stuff for hundreds of hours, you just need a bit of learning. Let's talk about level design. In a nutshell, level design comes down to two things: what you need to do, and how you get to it. For Geometry Dash, your goal is to beat a level, which we can break into beating one part at a time. As for how you do that, we'll use the game's mechanics, platforms, game modes, and objects like orbs and portals. Take this section for instance, where your goal is to reach this ship portal on the other side. How will you do that? Well, you can't just jump right here, it's way too high. So you'll stay on the platform to get enough height instead. This example is the core of level design, and it introduces three concepts you need to know. The gameplay is designed so you'll use the platforms to get from one place to another. Since that's the intended route, I'll call it the critical path. Finding this critical path can be easy, or it can be quite difficult. The process of figuring out the path is what we call learning, and the difficulty of learning is called readability. Finally, let's look at the platforms themselves. The gameplay doesn't change if they look like this, this, or this. The only parts that matter are the top and left side, since you can't reach the bottom or right. I'll call platforms and hazards on the critical path the essential points. If you change the essential points, you change the correct path. So the critical path is how you reach your goal, and finding it means learning where the essential points are, which can be easy or hard depending on how readable the level is. Each of these is crucial to good design, and messing them up can be really frustrating. For instance, let's say I add this coin up here. How can you reach it? Well, you can't just jump since it's too far up, and there aren't any orbs you could use to get there. And that's because I'm lying. What you actually do is fall down at this exact point, which will switch you to the shape game mode. You then fly up through the platforms to reach a coin. If you feel cheated by this, that's because you have been. I added a new mechanic without showing you, and there's no way you could have figured that out without clicking randomly and stumbling into the portal. Or you would need arrows to tell you something is there, which defeats the whole point. This leads to my first major point. The critical path should be fair. It's fine to make tricky gameplay that needs some thinking to figure out, but you shouldn't rely on stuff players could never figure out on their own. Here, it would be much better if you could skip the cube portal. That way you could see the coin and figure out that you need a different game mode to reach it. And the best part, I didn't need a single arrow to make that happen. You can figure this out without someone telling you what to do. And because it relies on you noticing things instead of cheap invisible platforms, it's a lot cooler to play too. Invisible gameplay isn't the only way to hurt level design. Take a look at this. How the hell can you pass this jump? There's no orbs you can click, and you're at normal speed, so you can't just jump over 4 spikes. And that's the problem, there's only 3 spikes here. The first one is actually an arrow telling you to jump, but it's really easy to confuse it for a spike. It should look different from the actual spikes so you won't confuse. This idea is called contrast, and it's important for level design. For instance, spikes are an essential point since they instantly kill you, so you need to distinguish them from normal safe blocks. But you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Geometry Dash already makes platforms out of rectangles and spikes from sharp triangles. A simple but effective contrast. Spikes and blocks also use different colors, so it's hard for them to blend in with the background. As a player, you can clearly see where these essential points are, and levels should maintain that even with complex visuals. Good contrast makes your essential points easy to see and makes the learning process fair. Speaking of learning, it can sometimes feel like the exact opposite of what I've said so far. You can have a fair critical path with a lot of misdirection, like extra paths you don't need to touch or orbs and paths that you should avoid. But people will still complain about it. And even if your essential points do stand out, you'll still have less contrast with lots of them on screen. So what should you do? Well, imagine readability as a difficulty spectrum. On one end, we have levels that are so easy to read you can do it right as you play. These are often called sight readable, and it's more extreme than just good contrast and an obvious critical path. This should also be possible with no prior knowledge of the gameplay. On the other end, we have complex and learny levels. These have a difficult critical path to follow, or they mislead you with fake objects or orbs and paths you should avoid. There's also memory levels, which challenge short-term memory in addition to your long-term learning. And of course, many levels fall somewhere in between and are just readable. Once you decide how much reading you want, you can use structuring to achieve it. Basically, add platforms and spikes to change how readable a section is. Here, it's hard to tell if you need to jump, so I added a saw after the platform to make it more obvious. On the other hand, I wanted to mislead players here, so I added some paths that they need to avoid instead. Just remember that you can't please everyone. Some people like side reading, while others prefer complex levels. It's more important to make what you want and get playtesters who share those preferences. This last part is really important since what makes sense in your head may not make sense to others. To combat this, ask people to test your level and watch them play without any help. Then tweak sections you thought made sense but were too confusing or out of place for others. This will ensure your level design makes sense without needing arrows at all. And if you have complex mechanics that nobody can figure out on their own, adding a small explainer or two can nudge players in the right direction without spoiling the full answer. So with all of that in mind, how do you actually do this when making gameplay? Well, start by placing your essential points to make a critical path, or the base gameplay. Then playtest your own level. Are there any parts that feel frustrating or confusing to remember? You can flip your level using mirror mode to trick your brain into viewing it with fresh eyes. Finally, use structures to adjust any awkward points and make the level as intuitive or complex as you want. With all that said, I do have one more issue with arrows, and it's not just a gameplay problem. Many creators use arrows to fill space and make their levels feel less empty, but this doesn't actually fix the real issue. To learn why, you should join the GDCS Discord using the link in... You know what? I'll let you figure this one out.